Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm gonna be testing this almost 8-year-old laptop featuring an i7-6700HQ, 16GB of DDR4, 2133 MHz in dual channel. Yes, that was the beginnings of DDR4, so it's pretty slow. And the star of the show, the GeForce GTX 1066GB. This is the XMG P507 and it released back in 2016 for close to 2,000 euros, my friends. 2,000 euros for a mid-range GPU in that lineup. That's crazy. But that's all because back in the 10 series, Nvidia actually put the actual desktop GPU inside of the laptops. So the GTX 1060 laptop was exactly the same as a GTX 1060 desktop GPU, except for a lower TDP on the laptops as well as a lower clock speed. So back then it definitely made sense to call the GTX 1060 laptop GPU just GTX 1060, unlike these days where we got RTX 4090s that are 60% slower on laptops than they are on desktops, and the name is exactly the same. The Pascal GPUs translated in insane gains in performance, making the mid-range GTX 1060 actually 15% faster than the previous flagship, the GTX 980M. Nowadays, however, the GTX 10 series are getting harder and harder to recommend, but do these old laptops still have life in them, and are they possibly a good buy in the used market? I actually bought this one for 285 euros, and let's find out how it performs. Shall we? Let's start with Counter-Strike 2. We're playing this one at 1080p resolution using the low settings with high textures. Alrighty, here we go. The frame time graph isn't really that smooth, is it? Like, there is quite a bit of thickness to it, guys. I don't really like that. That's not something that you want to see in a frame time graph, although the game feels smooth enough to play, you know. I have actually been playing for a little bit and it feels alright. I can definitely play the game like this. It's not really that much of a competitive experience anymore compared to like CSGO. In CSGO, I'm sure this laptop would have killed it, you know, but here in CS2, well, things are much more intensive. It is getting down into the like 90s at times, 80s, I guess, and the averages are only at around 100 frames per second. Now, that's not to say that it's a bad experience. Obviously, I actually played a lot of CSGO on an FX processor and GTX 760 back in the days with 69 FPS locked, and I had a ton of fun, and I reached the Supreme Master First Class rank, which is the second best rank in the game. So you can definitely play at a high level like this, but I would strongly recommend you to use an FPS lock at around like 75 maybe with a laptop like this, because otherwise the frame time graph, again, has a little bit of thickness to it. It's not completely stable. It stutters slightly sometimes, and it's just not going to provide that consistent of an experience, unfortunately, guys. Okay, now we're in a casual match, guys, just spectating here, getting around the same FPS, because we're still CPU bound, and I just really wanted to see the smokes, because this is where usually you'd see the lowest FPS possible if you are GPU bound, but since we were CPU bound, we only see the GPU utilization going up and actually maxing out sometimes at 98, 99%, but the FPS don't really move, so there is a positive side to the CPU bottleneck. It's that whenever you come across smokes, the FPS won't really change because we got that GPU headroom, you know. But obviously, I would much rather have a higher refresh rate experience without a CPU bottleneck, with a few drops here and there inside of smokes into like the 70s and 60s than this. Cyberpunk 2077 is up next. We're playing this one at 1080p resolution using the low settings preset with FSR 2.1 set to quality, and that's the only change I will make to the low preset here. Okay, here we are, guys. Look at that GPU utilization. It's not really maxing out in this one either, but it's getting close. Sometimes we are GPU bound, you know, but that i7 is super utilized as well. So once again, unfortunately, we will have a CPU bottleneck, my friends. Even in Cyberpunk 2077, the little i7 is just not enough. Like 4 cores and 8 threads at 3.1 GHz all-core turbo is pretty low by today's standards. Even recent i3s are much faster than this little CPU right here. Goodbye, Bob! Okay, alright, there we go. Mission complete, my friends. But this actually reminds me a lot of the integrated graphics, the APUs from AMD, like the 7840HS, you know, with Radeon 780M graphics. They get very similar results to this right here. Obviously, those have much faster CPUs than the little i7 6700HQ, so they're fully GPU bound, but still the 1% lows and the frame time stability are actually a little bit better than in those AMD APUs, probably because the VRAM is much faster here on GTX 1060, and that's a plus. That means that you can actually lock your FPS to like 40, for example, and achieve a very consistent experience. That's what I'm gonna do now. So I'm gonna set it to 40 FPS right here in RivetTuner Statistics server, and now we should have a buttery smooth 40 FPS. But the frame time is completely flat. We removed all of the little fluctuations that we were seeing. It feels much better to move around like this, guys. So yeah, we got a decent and a playable result at least. Now we're playing Rust at 1080p resolution using the medium settings preset, because the game now has presets, which is nice. And over on the image effects, this is what we're using. Experimental, this is it. Oh, look at this beautiful sunrise, my friends. It is actually looking very nice indeed. Now, unfortunately, once again, we are CPU bound. God damn it, mate. Every single time with this system, we're CPU bound. In this case, by the way, it is stuttering a bit more. Oh my god, it's literally stopping now. We got 0 FPS, 1% lows. But that is happening because the VRAM is not enough at medium settings, apparently. It's maxed out at the moment. And the RAM is also not enough. This game, at these settings, and even at lowest settings, can utilize way more than 16 gigabytes of RAM. And I have this installed on an SSD as well, so storage is not an issue, okay? Now, since this is stuttering so much, I'm actually gonna set it to low instead of medium. For some reason, it doesn't really touch these sliders here, and I feel like we should lower them down, because this is probably what's causing the CPU to deliver less than 60 frames per second. So this is it now. On the experimental settings, I'm also gonna disable these, and yeah, let's leave it like that. Okay, so now on low settings with the view distance not maxed out and shader quality and so on, we're getting 60 FPS. It's a little bit better than it was before, for sure. VRAM is not maxed out anymore. As you can see, it's only utilizing 4 gigabytes. It looks almost the same as well, so it's going to be a much more stable experience. This is not going to drop into the 30s, thankfully, and it gets around 60 FPS average, so I would be comfortable with this. Now let's play something more period adequate, guys. This is GTA 5 from 2015, actually from earlier than that, but it only released on PC in 2015, and this is exactly when this CPU came out, so it should do a good job. We're playing at 1080p resolution using the very high settings here, and I set the grass quality to high as well as post effects to normal, so it's not maxed out, but it looks very good still, and advanced graphics are all turned off, and now we are getting 70s, 80s, it's probably gonna dip down into the 60s, but I'm not expecting it to drop from 60 frames per second, alright? It's pretty stable as well. We've seen a 1 frame time spike, but it was probably just a one-off, you know. Also, something that I'm liking a lot about this laptop as well is the temperatures on the CPU and GPU. Obviously, GPU is pretty cool because it's not fully utilized yet in these games, at least that we've been testing so far. Maybe a little bit in Cyberpunk, you know, it was maxed out sometimes. But that CPU, considering the usage, it's getting really low temperatures for a laptop. That's because of those triple fans that we have inside of it. I'm not sure why not many more laptops these days have triple fans. And over here, I am expecting much higher GPU usage, and there we go. It's actually maxing out our GTX 1060 to 90+% utilization, and it's getting higher FPS as well, but Hello, Jack. How's it going, buddy? Anyway, we're seeing higher FPS because previously we were CPU bound, of course. Usually it's the opposite. This is way more GPU intensive, and if you are GPU bound, you're gonna see lower FPS inside of here. Same thing as the smokes in CS2, right? Go bob bob. Now, unfortunately, if you go play online, it's gonna be a different story because it's more CPU intensive. So it's gonna drop from 60 FPS, probably get like 40 plus. But still an okay experience, and for single player it works very, very well. Ooh, the finals is actually pretty playable, guys. Look at this. This is nice. A little bit stuttery, and the CPU is once again bottlenecking the GPU, but most of the time it's actually a pretty smooth experience, and it's an enjoyable one. So we're playing at 1080p with FSR2 on quality, 100 FOV, static RTX global illumination, obviously, like you don't want to use anything other than static here, and the low settings, and it's very good. I honestly thought we'd get way lower FPS than this and a bigger CPU bottleneck than this as well. Because this game is pretty CPU intensive, you know? It uses a lot of cores in higher core count CPUs. And I was really afraid that 4 cores and 8 threads at 3.1 gigahertz wouldn't be enough. But hey, it proved me wrong. The developers definitely optimized this game really well, guys. And it's super, super enjoyable even on an older laptop like this one. Now, if you're wondering how it would do with 100% resolution scale, this is it. Ooh, still pretty similar, actually, at least over here, but look at that. It's already dropping into the lower 60. You freaking bastard! See that GPU utilization? It's maxed out at the moment. We don't have a CPU bottleneck anymore, but the FPS are dropping from 60 FPS, unfortunately, and I wouldn't really want that experience in a first-person shooter when I have the option to play with similar graphics. Oh my god! Oh, I didn't notice these guys. Similar graphics. A little bit lower quality, of course, but with 60 plus FPS all of the time. That's definitely the way to go with FSR. And yeah, and since we're playing more recent titles now, here is Starfield. This is not ideal, but I mean, it is playable, although it looks really crappy, actually. Let's go over the settings. We're playing this at 1080p using 50% resolution scale. Lowest settings with medium indirect lighting, because this is actually broken if you set it too low on these older GPUs. FSR2 is also enabled. I'm going to turn off VSync, although it's not really doing anything. Sharpening, well, let's set it to like 69. That's the perfect value, obviously. And it's getting 30s. Okay, over here in Atlantic City as well, which is one of the most intensive areas in the game. So that makes me believe that it's gonna stay above 30 FPS in other areas as well. God damn it, it actually drops sometimes into the 20s at what's essentially 540p or performance FSR, okay? So it's rough. It doesn't really look too bad for performance FSR, and on a smaller monitor, again, it will look alright. But yeah, with a couple of dips here and there, I'm not sure if I would pick up this game to play on these specs. Definitely not. Starfield is a bad game anyways. It's receiving very bad reviews on Steam at the moment, so just avoid this one. Now it's Dota 2. We're playing at 1080p using the high settings right here. Okay, so these are the settings. And let's start counting our FPS. Apparently, it is gonna drop from 60 frames per second. Look at that, into the 50s. At first, I was gonna test it at ultra settings, but then I saw it dropping into the 40s, and that's a bit too low, okay? I don't mind 50s too much. I'm okay with that, but 40, it starts getting rough. Now, it averages around 60 FPS with all of this happening here, a big team fight, you know, with a lot of effects and stuff like that. GPU utilization isn't really maxing out. Unfortunately, again, we have a CPU bottleneck. I feel bad for the people who spent a lot of money getting a laptop with this i7-6700HQ and the GTX 1080, for example, because that was a popular configuration at the time as well. This was the best most mainstream CPU that you could get on laptops, basically, aside from like 6820 HK or something like that. Anyways, when nothing is happening, you can get well above 60 frames per second, like 80s or so. They were playing Roshan over here. It still didn't really drop from 60 FPS here in Roshan. I took a look at it previously. And again, it's Dota 2. You don't really need 60 plus 100% of the time. And if you do, just lower it down to low settings. It's going to look pretty bad, but hey, it is possible to get 60 plus at least. Hogwarts Legacy is next. We're playing this at 1080p using FSR2 on quality, which means that it renders the game at 720p and then it upscales it. And over on the graphics settings, we're using the low settings preset without ray tracing. We can actually enable it with 1060. Interesting. And while standing still here, it's actually getting close to 60 frames per second, but as soon as we start moving, it drops instantly into the 40s, and it's another one of those CPU bottleneck scenarios, my friends. At least here in Hogsmeade, this is a very, very CPU-intensive area. Let's get to one of the most GPU-intensive areas that I have found so far. Seems like CPU is good for like 40 plus frames per second, and the GPU might actually be maxed out here. Let's see. We're almost there. It's right here, guys. GPU usage, it's going up to like 93% right there, but yeah, it didn't really max out, so... Well, guys, since we had that GPU headroom, what I did now is I kept the same resolution settings and selected the medium settings preset, restarted the game, and locked the FPS to 35, just to be safe. Yeah, that's it. Here we go. 35 FPS locked, medium settings. Maybe it has a little bit... Yeah, it has motion blur at the moment, but... Hey, we aren't really seeing as many frame time spikes, at least over here. It still has a little bit of variation, but it's way better. Oh, massive stutters there, actually. Okay, maybe just stick to low with FPS lock and it should be better, right? Oh, boy. In Hogsmeade, it's still terrible, guys. It gets more CPU intensive, so we actually gotta lock it to like 30 FPS. To get a smooth frame time graph almost all of the time. It still drops. It still stutters. God damn it. Okay, so you either get used to the stuttering or just don't get the game whatsoever. The FPS on average are playable though. Now it's one of the best optimized games in this list. Forza Horizon 5 at 1080p using TAA and the high settings preset, which does look pretty decent in this game. And look at that, guys. Finally, we do not have a CPU bottleneck. I am very happy to see this now. 99% GPU utilization all of the time on that 1060. Buttery smooth experience. Now, of course, we still need to get to the city area of this game, the bigger one. That's both more GPU and CPU intensive, but... I bet it's gonna get like at least 50 plus. Finally, city area, still 99% GPU usage, so we're not really CPU bound yet. Sometimes it lowers it down a little bit, but hey, it's well above 60 all of the time. Now let's go to the tunnel here, and this is where it's gonna drop the most. There we go, it's dropping from 60. 53 is the minimum, but that's only gonna happen inside of tunnels or when getting out of them. Good stuff here, my friends. Very, very good. Next up is Red Dead Redemption 2 at 1080p resolution using the Xbox One X settings with DirectX 12 because it was actually a bit stuttery in Vulkan. But in the X12, it is buttery smooth, as you can see by the frame time graph, and it's getting 99% GPU utilization. So in this one, we also don't have any CPU bottlenecks. Great stuff, my friends. I love to see that. I could definitely enjoy the game like this. It's gonna look great on the 15-inch monitor from the laptop, and these settings provide a really nice balance between visuals and performance. Unfortunately, I'm not really seeing Jack around here, guys. That's a shame. Okay, now we're arriving at Strawberry, which is one of the most intensive cities or little towns here in this game. It's not really that big, as you can see, but the FPS are dropping already into the mid-30s. This is pretty intensive, I think, because of the water. There's a river coming through this town, and water is very, very intensive in this particular title. Just to finish up this benchmark here in Red Dead Redemption 2, I want to check it out in Saint Denis. This should be a more CPU-bound around area of the game because it's a huge city. It's starting to stutter slightly, but it's not really affecting my experience here. And that frame time graph is definitely a little bit more inconsistent. You can also see that GPU utilization is not at 99% all of the time anymore. So again, we are seeing a little bit of a CPU bottleneck, but it should still provide a good experience, right? Now we're playing Stutter Night at 1080p resolution using DirectX 12 and the high settings without Nanite with 100% resolution scale. And I also installed the streaming assets that you can find inside of Epic Games Launcher. So it's stuttering way less than it would if I had that option disabled, but it's still quite a bit of a mess, especially while driving around really fast. You can see the frame time graph is not amazing, although we're getting 62 FPS on average, which is decent for high settings, definitely for a laptop like this. And if you get used to it, I guess you could play like this and have a decent experience, just not a competitive one. Come on, you bastards. I got 100 HP off of that guy. There's another one. Are you kidding me? Well, you know what? I didn't want to play it anyways with these settings, so I just turned it down to 1080p DirectX 12 low settings with 100% resolution scale and high textures, and this will probably give us a much more competitive experience and much better one. I really hope so. Let's find out. Now, obviously, there's still performance mode that you could utilize to achieve even higher FPS, but that actually stutters a little bit more than DirectX 12 does. So, yeah, this is actually really smooth. Look at that frame time graph. Not any major spikes right now. CPU and GPU usage are very neck and neck, you know, so it's very balanced right now with these settings. What? There's a tiger here? Wait. Oh, this is not the other area with the vault. Maybe this also has a vault, but oh boy. Hello. Come on. Come over here, boy. Come over here, boy. No, do not use that crap. Anyways, that's it for Stutter Night. If you have a laptop like this, I wouldn't really upgrade just for this game unless you are really, really competitive at it. But yeah, you can definitely have a lot of fun still. Even though the engine has been upgraded to UE5, it still runs really well. Haha, now we're playing one of the best looking games of 2023. Yep, this is it. This is Alan Wake 2, my friends, like you've never seen it. We're playing it at 160p resolution using FSR2 to downscale it from 480p, and the absolute lowest settings here, okay? And we barely get 20 frames per second. It actually drops down from 20 very often, as you can see. We're getting 15! Oh my god! Yeah, I was expecting this because even the 1080 Ti desktop GPU couldn't run this properly at 30 plus FPS with these settings as well, okay? So the game's just completely broken on 10 series. Do not buy this if you have a laptop like this one. Now we're playing Apex Legends at 1080p using the low settings and high textures. Starting off looking at the entire map, gets us 60-ish frames per second, which is quite nice. It's unlikely that down there we're gonna see lower FPS. But yeah, it seems like both the CPU and the GPU are doing a really nice job in this one. The game still looks good on low settings with high textures. Of course, the textures don't really impact FPS by much as long as you have enough VRAM. Look at that, going up to like 150 FPS. There's a guy up there. Should we? All right, there we go. Oh, he's like a little dot in the screen. Jeez, I could barely see the guy. And there are still more of them there. Oh, wait. Okay. All right. Okay. That one is down. Good stuff. Whoa. Mozambique for the win. Ow. Dropping again. Start counting our FPS. You know what? I'm going to check out the smoke right away. And it doesn't drop too much. All right. 90s. That's still very high. Okay, I finally got my ultimate ready. I'm going to throw it out right here. And over here it should be good, right? Worst case scenario. Here we go. 70s. Seriously? 70s is worst case scenario with this system? That's really nice, guys. Not gonna lie, it's way better than what I expected. I mean, Apex, again, is pretty well optimized. It's not the hardest game to run. Oh boy, that was a nice shot. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that it's run so well on a 1060, right? But I was expecting the i7 to be a bit of a bottleneck in this one, but it wasn't. So now we're playing ARK Survival Ascended, and oh my god. Yep, this is atrocious. Oh my god, what is this? Ha! What the hell? UE5, my friends. Unreal Engine 5 when it's not optimized. This is what it looks like. When it's optimized, you get the finals, Fortnite to some extent. When it's not, well, here we have it. 20 frames per second and a super stuttery 20 frames per second. And this doesn't even look like native 1080p. Look at all of the halo effects around my character there. It's so pixelated at the edges. Actually, this defaults to 58% resolution scale at low settings, so I'm gonna set it to that. Oh, I just noticed that I didn't show you the settings, but we were playing at native 1080p previously with the lowest settings, and now we're playing with 58% resolution scale with the lowest settings as well. And it looks, oh my god, okay, yeah, it's even more pixelated at the moment. Although, with these settings, we can achieve 30 frames per second, so yay! It doesn't even get 30 all of the time. Now, I'm actually going to use like 0% resolution scale. I mean, this should be terrible. Okay, yeah. But hey, at least with the lowest resolution scale value, we can get 30 plus FPS when it's not stuttering and pausing the game completely. Oh, this is such a good experience, my friends. 2023 gaming on a 1060 for you. This game's so broken. Even like a 3060 Ti has trouble running it. Oh boy, it is Valorant time, my friends. We're playing this one at the 1080p resolution using... Oh, wait a second. Let me turn off all of the FPS locking systems. Using the high settings with MSAA 4 times. This one is set to low because who cares about the UI quality, really? And improved quality actually drops FPS by a lot, so I chose to have it disabled. Oh, it's starting. It's... Seriously? See... Let's start counting our FPS. Here we go. 83, wait, no, 140 something FPS here on average. That's very good. Wait. So all right, let's concentrate, my friends. Let's concentrate. We can do this. Wait, I'm sorry, guys. I just came from a party. You can probably tell, like, I'm dressing like this. And I drank Golden Drac, and that's just the best beer in the world, my friends. That's just... It's unbeatable, unlike me in Valorant. But still, I am doing fine, right? Yeah, no. Not really. What is doing fine is the GTX 1060 as well as the i7 6700 HQ that we're playing on. That's just fine, really. I was expecting a higher refresh rate experience, but... it's passable. I mean, 133 FPS average is actually really good. It's going to be a smooth experience, obviously. You can still play competitively with this, absolutely. And if you require more FPS, there's always the low settings preset for those of you who want a little bit higher FPS. It's not going to be massively higher because, again, CPU bottleneck. I don't know how many times I have said that in this video. But hey, I think this is not bad for $285, right? And finally, we got Call of Duty Warzone 3. We're playing this one at 1080p resolution using FSR 2.1 on quality and the minimum settings preset aside from texture resolution, which is set to low instead of very low. And it seems like it's gonna be okay. Oh boy, no, it's already dropping from 50 frames per second, guys. This is bad. I don't like this. Oh my god, how many bullets does it take to kill a guy in this game? Alright, start counting our FPS and... come on. Oh my... Seriously? Where from? Oh, it was another guy. What? So far away. Now, as our 1% lows got wrecked there, I'm just gonna restart the counting system. We're still getting 50s. It's a heavy CPU bottleneck again, my friends. I was kind of hopeful previously because I saw 60 FPS plus in the plane, but... Yep, we're getting 50s down here, and that's to be expected, honestly, because this is a huge map with 100 people on it, almost 91 people at the moment. So it's normal that the little i7 from 2015, I mean, the thing is 9 years old at the moment, it can't really get 60 plus FPS. I would be very impressed if it could. It's a big shame that this game is running in this state these days, because I believe if it was back when Warzone 2 came out, it would have been a lot more playable of an experience, because the game got immensely more CPU bound with all of the updates that they did to Warzone 2.0, and this is what we get these days, okay? Like, my 5800X3D used to get 230 FPS, and now it's down to like 150 or 160. Yeah, that's rough. Anyway, this is the experience in Warzone. I wouldn't really play this game. Fortunately, if you play like the multiplayer, which is paid of course, instead of Warzone, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be at 60 FPS because it's not gonna have 100 players and it's not gonna be CPU bound. But if you want to play the free version of this, and I wouldn't really recommend you to pay for the multiplayer anyways, this is it. And it's finally conclusion time, my friends. I'll still have Assassin's Creed Mirage running right here while we talk about the experience. So for the 285 euros that I paid for it, it's actually a pretty decent deal in my opinion. Now, the CPU will be a bottleneck. You can't really do any editing work on it. I tried, believe me. It's basically a quad core with 8 threads these days with pretty low clock speeds at 3.1 gigahertz all-core turbo, and that hurts it a lot, especially when paired with a GTX 1060. I actually had a similar laptop to this one. It was the XMG P506 with a GTX 970M and the same CPU and same RAM. Obviously, the 1060 delivered a way better experience than that other laptop that I had, but it's a shame that it's CPU bound all of the time. So if you can, and if you have to pay only like 50 bucks more to get a laptop with a 1060 still, 16 gigabytes and so on, but with an i7 8750H, that's what I would recommend instead of this little quad core. The 8750H is a 6-core CPU with 12 threads, and it's much stronger at running the newest titles. But yeah, it all comes down to price and the games that you play. So I will say, if you are on a budget and you play older titles mainly, this is still a decent option. It also has driver support still, so that's always great. That's been it for this one. Thank you very much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a happy new year. This is the last video that I'm gonna post in 2023, and I'll catch you in 2024 with more benchmark videos. Stay tuned in because I will change some things around. As always, love you all. Bye-bye.